Hello and welcome to Astrology and Cinema in Real Life. It is my special treat to have Tracy Quinlan and Lillian Bennett of what's the name of your podcast? You tell us all about it,
Skynote.
please. Sky Note, of course it is. And I was recently a guest with them. Awesome experience being with you guys. A little bit of a secret. Tracy and I, well, I guess all three of us, we kind of mess up the time zones. And this time of year, in case you didn't know it, all the different countries change their clocks at different times. So actually, it's quite hard to coordinate. But anyway, we managed it all in one tonight. So welcome, you guys. So Tracy, would you like to tell me a little bit about you and your podcast, please?
Sure. So Lillian and I have Sky Notes podcast. My astrology company, though, is called Consult the Sky. So that's what I do personally. I'm a consulting astrologer. I write horoscopes for the Llewellyn calendar. I have a book coming out in February called Charting Love Through Astrology. So yeah, I consult, I write, do all sorts of stuff.
I saw your book at the astrology shop here in London. Amazing. I always get really excited when I see an astrologer that I know. In case anybody doesn't know, Tracy and I are the meme queens of astrology. We always have something going on with, we love a good meme.
It's like a competition of who can find the cleverest meme.
Exactly.
Okay. Sorry, I cut you off. Anything else, Tracy, you want us to know?
No, that's it. Just thanks for having us. I'm
No,
excited about
a,
this conversation we're about to have.
a pleasure. And Lillian,
Yeah, so I am also a consulting astrologer, and I've done a few classes and just relocated. So I'm getting my sea legs again so I can teach locally. I've just joined one of the NCGR groups that will start at the end of November. I'm excited about that. And of course, Sky Notes takes premier place for me at the moment, where we're just trying to figure out how to let folks know what astrologers are up to. And yeah, I'm really excited to be on. I don't I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I got to watch a bunch of cool movies and that was
oh,
really interesting. So I can't wait to talk.
excellent. And it takes a lot of work to do a podcast. It's, got to be, you got to keep at it and you got to keep learning new things. And that's exciting to me. I have Venus in Gemini. I'm always up to learning something new. And, so just if you're listening to this, your subscribes and your likes and your comments are gold dust to us. And we're both channels are kind of new, we really do
Mhm.
need those subscriptions and interactions to help our channels grow. Okay, so Tracy, you've chosen a very interesting film.
Well, I didn't know what kind of beehive I was dragging us into. I didn't know that you can't actually really find the movie anymore because of the
Wow.
court case that has not been resolved. So yeah, I didn't know what kind of beehive this was going to be. So yes, I picked The Blind Side, but it was actually the controversy that I was attracted to because the movie tells a different story than what we found out later on about these two people. So
Yes,
yeah.
and I think, as long as we're fair and we're upfront and we say, hey, this is a controversial film, I think that that's okay. But we could talk about that as we go along. Now, the way I've always worked, my format is we talk about the real person first, then we put the actor who portrayed them in as a synastry chart, and then we talk about the transits of the movie when it was released because Sandra Bullock was a Best Actress winner.
Yeah,
So, and
she
I
was.
also have Michael Oher's chart as well, which
Yes.
happens to be
Yeah, I was
timed.
looking Yeah, I was looking at his and Quentin's, and I found an article on the person who played Michael Oher where he had a near-death experience recently, and it's caused this huge change of heart. So I was pleased to see that because I couldn't really find what he was doing professionally. So now you can see there's like this resurgence.
So, Tracy, what
Well,
did you like about this film?
well, first of all, I'm a sucker for the somebody becoming successful who doesn't come from an easy path, and I'm a total mush at heart. I think that might surprise some people, but it's true. And I love Sandra Bullock as well. But over time, you know, even shortly after I watched it, you realize she's the one who has been celebrated, and it's not really her story, it's his. And then, so to find out the controversy later, it put a lot of things into perspective. And so I found, um, you know, Sandra Bullock, I don't think she doesn't come across as somebody who's exploitive. And so the fact that
Mm.
she ended up into, like, not even knowing that that is what she walked into, I found interesting. So just looking at how their two charts differ and are similar, I was curious to look at for sure. And then also, um, you know, he, from what I read, the film, like the events of the film are pretty similar, except for the motivations are quite different. And the fact that they portrayed um, Michael Orr as someone who actually couldn't play football to start out with is not true. He actually was quite a good football player already. So things like that attracted me to looking at what the astrology would look like and what the synastry between. I had actually pulled Michael Orr and the actor who played him, Quinton Aaron. I pulled them both up to see what that looked like too.
Okay, so let's jump into Leigh Anne Tuohy.
Yeah.
And now we'd like to keep a light touch with astrology, but I love to see, what astrologers pick up first. What is the first thing that, knowing what you know about her, that she took this relative stranger into her home, looked after him, according to the movie at least, and helped him to be successful, at least according to the movie. So, what do we look at first? And I got to say, the first thing I was attracted to was Sun conjunct Uranus and Leo. And all I could think of
Hmm.
was, what a show off, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay. My first thought was the Saturn in Capricorn. Just because of
Oh,
the story that we found out, right? That she found a commodity and monetized him, you know. And so to me, that's a very Saturn in Capricorn. And the fact that it's retrograde might tell a little bit of a story of you know, maybe the morals or the guiding principles of Saturn need to be learned, you know. And so that the,
Saturn's in
you
the
know, the
rulership
learning,
in Capricorn. It's super strong.
right.
yeah, but yeah,
And
absolutely. But retrograde, there are lessons, right? There are things that you have to learn to get the fullness out of a planet, especially if it's in its own sign. That's what I've noticed with the Saturn retrograde, anyways. So yeah,
and
and it's
and
Yeah.
quincunx. It's
Leanne,
quincunx
Say
the
more
sun.
about that.
sorry, Lillian.
Oh, say more about the quincunx, Tracy. Sorry, I didn't want to jump off of that.
Oh yeah, so quincunx the sun. Anything you have quincunx the sun is going to create problems for who you are and how you're seen, you
Hmm.
know. And so the
Interesting.
fact that she put business ahead of everything else
Hmm.
is not going to do any favors to what she would, who she would like to be seen as. And since she
Hmm.
told the story of the movie, really, it's told from her perspective, and she had a lot
Right.
to do with the writing of it. Um, to find out the Saturn and Capricorn story later on, and then that makes her look bad, makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense.
It's
And
so
then
interesting. I look at that the South Node loosely conjunct the moon. And I think, that's somebody whose judgment is normally quite good, if unusual. I mean, the story of the Troys were that they had many Kentucky Fried Chickens and Taco Bells across the South. They met at Old Miss. He was the basketball player. I'm sure we watched the same stuff. And she was a cheerleader. They fell in love. And he started offering Michael Toey a place, or Michael Oher a
oh,
place to stay. But he had had a place to stay with people who loved him. And that was another piece that was missing. And one of the things I kept hearing in the content I saw was marketing. They wanted to market it. So they didn't necessarily think about developing his character, and that it was almost he got upset at them, right? Like they had explanations in all kinds of directions about what happened. They certainly loved him. They certainly supported him. So it's a really interesting schism. And I think about that instinctual South Node behavior, her heart's there. She can't let go.
what I found in writing Mirror Mirror, because there were 104 biopics, and I was very surprised that the nodes are often implicated. There's strong connections either when the movie's released or between the actor and the real life person. And the other one that surprised me was Chiron is often in here because the actor is stepping into the other person's pain. Um, so there is often a sense of destiny. This person was meant to play this part in this film. But coming back to that moon in Pisces conjunct the South Node, if we look at the intuition side of Pisces and their sort of very dreamy sort of approach to life, and we got the South Node in there, it's almost kind of like I want to say that Leigh Anne, should have used that intuition a bit better. Instead, she kind of used it in a way that ended up, feeling like it was exploiting somebody else, even if that wasn't the intention, because remember, Pisces is ruled by Neptune, which rules films. And, so I just kind of felt, it was a misunderstanding that, but things could have been a bit clearer had she put that Saturn in Capricorn energy to better use.
You're much more generous to her than I am.
Well,
I don't lean towards accident, but who knows, right?
Right.
When you listen to his side of the story, he makes it sound like they gave him adoption papers that actually weren't. They were here, we want all of your money that you're going to make. And he actually hasn't been adopted. There are no adoption papers.
Yes. Right.
Just the what's that called? Something ship.
Conservatorship, like Brittany.
Conservatorship, yes.
Yeah, like Brittany.
That's what he signs. Yeah.
Which is different because, especially these are when I think about the conditions I've heard about, and who knows what it is, like I'm looking at that Jupiter in Sagittarius that's also quite strong. And I'm looking at that Mars in Gemini that's like,
and the Sun in Leo.
Right? Like I could see where there's impatience, but here's what I thought. So he was 18. So they said a conservatorship was the best they could do, but they could have adopted him. And then the question is like, if they're rich and it's his money, why not? And you wrote a book and you made a movie. Why not let him have his money like he's your little baby and give him that money to go on with? And that to me is the real, like, that is at the heart of any family. My gosh, you can find that argument everywhere. So they're a family, whether they like it or not, because they're performing all the parts.
Well, I didn't want to call her a slimy bitch because she has moon in Pisces, because I didn't want to think anybody with moon in Pisces to think, just because you have moon in Pisces, you're a slimy bitch.
Yeah.
I don't mean to be generous, but I don't want to be judgmental either. I want to be careful with what we say.
I love the what you said about the moon in Pisces. One of the maybe unconscious dangers of that placement, especially with the South Node, that's such a psychic, energetically connected placement. It's that's the gift of it, one of the gifts of it. But often, if somebody's not living a spiritually conscious life, the boundaries can be pretty not there at all.
Yes.
So that's something that maybe played in something like this. We're not sort of understanding where those boundaries should be and how to work within them. Might be something that's a challenge with that placement.
And I think there's a mirror reflection with the moon in Pisces too. They're happy as long as you're reflecting back what they want to hear. The minute you start telling them the truth, then they get a little bit, then you're going to see the other side of Pisces. Remembering it's a mutable sign. You're going to see the other side of Pisces.
We had a great interview with Sam about the Zodiac Mafia, and Pisces was one of the signs that he says is quite underestimated because they will find your soft spots and they will hurt you for a lesson. So I do feel that a little bit, that notion.
And the other sign too that I think is underestimated, and I could be biased because it's my sun sign, is Cancer. We sure are
Yes.
moody, but we can read a room, and once we get mad, we got the little clippers that will never let go. So
Absolutely.
watch out
Absolutely.
for those water signs. You might
So
think that.
along those lines, the Pisces at 0 Chiron opposing that Venus
Mm,
with the Pluto right next to it. I mean, to me, there's a lot of wanting, a lot of desire that may be, as Tracy sometimes says, okay with her because it's familiar, but not because it's healthy. Or again, like maybe she just misjudged the situation, but there's kind of a lot of power in the chart. And then the desire to understand it has to kind of come forefront, I think. When you've got such a powerful chart, it really helps to have those things like you're discussing, a strong spiritual background, which I think the family and Michael both have.
well,
But you can
look at that
still
Neptune.
wander.
She's got Neptune
Well,
in the
yeah,
12th house. That's the modern ruler of her moon. She's a
yeah,
very glamorous woman. I think that came
yes,
across too. There's that, you know, I'm a pretty girl, I can get what I want, you know,
yeah.
that came out in the
Hmm.
film. And maybe that's not how she really is in real life. It's just how it came across in the film. And,
Interesting.
again, not judging Leigh Anne. I'm not anyway.
And
I
it's
don't
a
want, we can only go on what we read in the newspaper and what we see
Yeah,
on the
we
film.
don't we don't know
yeah.
her story. We don't, this is what we're doing with the chart and a demonstration. I think that's really respectful.
Yeah.
Something
Um,
that struck me too is that she doesn't have a lot of the kind of cardinal energy to facilitate that Saturn in Capricorn. But Michael Orr has a Mars in Capricorn. And
Ah,
then his Jupiter in Pisces is conjunct her moon. So he had a lot to offer those planets in her chart.
yeah.
Absolutely. So
that's
they
interesting.
had they had an interesting synastry for sure.
No, we're not going to do too much of their synastry between those two. It's only because, I think it's when we're looking at film, we want to be very careful that we're not getting into, you know, like trying to do a consultation without them here. So I want to be careful that
Exactly.
we're sticking to the real life events or what we see on the film. So just put some boundaries in there because when we talk about Moon and Pisces, we might lose our boundaries a bit. So just to bring that back in there. Are we ready for some synastry?
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's see.
Okay, so just to help everybody find their orientation. So Leigh Anne Tuohy, the real life person, is in the very middle. And then we have Sandra Bullock, the actress who portrayed her on the outside. Now, I use solar fire. And as it happens with solar fire, because I've done hundreds of charts, I can't find a way of putting in if I don't have a timed chart for the middle chart,
Ah,
I can't get rid of the angles for the second person's chart. But Sandra Bullock's chart is timed, so we just have to bear that in mind. But what do you see?
They both have a sun in Leo.
They sure do. But how about that Chiron conjunct Leigh Anne
Yeah,
Tuohy's
oh, wow.
South Node?
Ouch. Yeah.
Yeah, so you see what I mean about the South Node is often
Oh,
implicated, and I found very few exceptions. And it's
oh,
kind of almost like Sandra was going to get burned in some way, or drowned, or
yeah.
waterboarded in some way from this film because she, as popular as she is, you know, she took a lot of flack for it. Even though she got the Best Actress Oscar that year, there was a lot of backlash on this film.
still talking about it. That it wasn't her intention to affect their story that way, and it's such a bigger thing, with society. I mean, you can look at other examples like the Green Book, which is a story about how Black folks traveled in the South and the main character's a white guy. Like this happens over and over and over where the marketing just starts to
That white
market to
savior
it.
marketing.
Yeah, and it's unnecessary. So I think it's nice that we're on that moment in this discussion, but there is like a broader difficulty, with that. But yeah, that is really striking, that that Chiron.
And also the observation that you made, Lillian, about the 0 degree Venus and the Chiron in Leigh Anne's chart. And then if you look at Sandra, her midheaven at the bottom with Saturn is right on that.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That opposition. Hey, so there you go again with the Chiron. But Saturn is again a big part of this story. Hey,
she's manifesting. She manifested the story, and it was imaginal in part.
Its intentions were definitely imaginal. Yeah, absolutely. And you've got Pluto on a node. Like there's a lot of nodal action. You're right, Alex. That's really stunning.
Okay, so let's just move on to the transits of the film. Bearing in mind what we said about it, it's controversial, but when it came out, my understanding, it had less of an impact here in England. I understand everyone was talking about it, but when it really didn't make a splash here in England. So we didn't really hear about the controversy until much, much later, because it's an all-American kind of story.
Yeah.
So again, let me help people get their orientation, because when you start looking at tri-whales, it can be difficult. So in the very middle is the character, the real life person, Leigh Anne Tuohy. The middle chart is the actress who portrayed her, and the outer chart are the transits for when the film was released. We got to be careful of the angles, because we have an untimed real life person and a noon chart for the film's release. So just to be careful. So I can't take my eyes off Pluto on the south node of Sandra Bullock.
Oh, for goodness sake. Wow.
Oh, there we go. Yes. Oh my.
And then look at Chiron. Now we have Sandra Bullock's time chart. So her moon is at 21 degrees Aquarius, and we got transiting Chiron on her moon when the film was released.
Junk Neptune.
Absolutely.
Right. So yeah, that's the idea around the fogginess around the story, that not quite the reality being portrayed. Yeah.
So there'll be a shoe to drop in those circumstances when the clarity arrives.
Absolutely. Is the outer wheel a timed chart, Alex?
No, I'm sorry. And
no, that's okay. I just needed to know.
I'm just trying to think. Sundance. I said it for Hollywood as well. Unless I know where it was filmed, I always use Hollywood.
That's smart.
Because if you're using a time chart, really where it's released doesn't matter. But the rule I always have is I always look at first viewing, because from the first viewing, you'll get film reviews. So the reason why I say that is some films might be released in Venice, they might be released in Telluride, it might be released in New York or at Sundance at different times. So I always take first viewing, first showing for the chart. So it was on this date, set for noon, because I was thinking a lot of cinemas open around noon. I saw the Bruce Springsteen biopic, becoming one of the first people in the country to see it. It was kind of cool, and I did our last episode with Cass and O'Connell. We did it on, I think we did it the day after, so it was released on the day before we did the actual episode. So that was really exciting. And but so yeah, I think it's really important to point these things out, just because it's when people are going to see it first. But
there's one last thing that I can't help but notice, that because I'm trying to think in my mind, one of the elements of this story was the surprise of the family at the unhappiness of Michael. And so I'm looking for that, right? Where would that come from? And look at the Uranus on Leigh Anne Tuohy's moon in that transit chart. Am I looking at that right?
Yes, you are. So it's here.
Yeah, so it's sort of this ground shaking change, right? That she would not have seen coming.
And
Wow.
just for people who might not be aware, I have to use a noon chart for Leigh Anne because we don't know her timed chart. So that
Right.
moon could be a few degrees either direction, but still that Uranus would pick that up too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just
Good
with
point.
the backlash and everything that's happened since, that Saturn square Sandra's nodes is you got to
Interesting.
wonder. Yeah. Yeah. That definitely would show something, some kind of authority coming back at her for this movie in some way.
But I think if I have my film reviewer's hat on, I would still look at this. Okay, yeah, it was a bit schmaltzy, but I would still look at it as, a film that, had some good moments in it. And I got to say, I was disappointed to hear the backstory.
Me as
I'm,
well.
I'm,
Yeah,
I'm,
me as well.
I'm quite gutted that, someone was taken advantage of. But
Yeah.
overall, the film, it was engaging, I thought.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
what puts you off is the backstory. Again, I think that's the Uranus effect. And Tracy, what did you find out about the connections between Michael Oher and Quinton Aaron?
Let me just grab this and look at it. So Michael Oher has 29 degrees of Aries and Libra nodes. The South Node is in Libra. So Quinton Aaron has a 29-degree Libra Pluto. So that's exact. I think it's within about 12 minutes. Michael Oher has a sun at 7 degrees of Gemini. Quinton Aaron has his Chiron conjunct North Node at right, but it kind of hits the midpoint of the sun. What else do we have? Quinton's Jupiter sits on Michael Oher's Neptune.
Wow.
There is a trine between Quinton the actor's sun to Michael Oher's North Node. I could go on. There's it really is, the synastry is wild. Michael Oher's Saturn is at 6 degrees of Sagittarius. And that's where Quinton Aaron has a conjunction between Uranus and the South Node. Yeah, I don't know that there are a lot of planets that aren't connected to the nodal axis between the two of them, to be quite honest. It's the synastry is actually stronger between those two people than it is between Leigh Anne and Sandra. Yeah, it's pretty fantastic. So I would think that if we were to look at it from a point of view of who was the most genuine portrayal of the person that they were hired to bring to life, it would definitely be Quinton. And now that we know the backstory, that makes a lot of sense, because Sandra really wasn't playing Leigh Anne. She was playing a version of, so there's good synastry, but it's not like it is for the two young men involved, for sure.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Now, you chose the movie Rescue Dawn. I have a confession to make.
Yes.
I am not a fan of war flicks. And you're okay.
Of a horror film, right?
Well, yes, a horror or war flick. So I did watch a little bit of it, but to be honest, I didn't watch it all the way through just because I don't like this genre very much.
Sure.
But what did you like about the film? Because we're all different.
Yeah.
We all have different opinions.
Yeah. So the film is actually secondary to the documentary created by Werner Herzog called Little Dieter Needs to Fly, where the man is actually describing how he is now. He has OCD. He's brave, but he has been marked by this escape. And he goes through the story, which includes some fun stuff like at 14, which is, of course, his Saturn opposition, he started working with this blacksmith who was just terrible to him. And he'd make him work day and night, 7 days a week, and he'd smack him on the head. And it was just awful. And until he got to the Laotian jungle, he couldn't figure out why he had to suffer so much. And then when he got there, he went, oh, because I have to live. I have to live. And then as he was escaping, there was a moment where he saw his father, who was drafted when he was a 1-year-old and died shortly thereafter in World War II. And his father was pointing the way out of the swamp. And that actually carried him through to the next place, to that component of mysticism. And then he's a person of passion, which the documentary shows differently, because he said little Dieter needs to fly. Why? Because as the Germans were bombing his home as a 7-year-old, he saw the pilot face to face, and then the pilot flew off and he was like, this is it. This is how I do it. But because he had the family history of his grandfather saying, I'm not voting for Hitler, and he got marched through the city and they spat on him, all of this stuff, he had the resolve to say, I'm not going to do this in Germany. I'm going to America. And he got into Vietnam, and the very first flight, he was shot down and then had to go through this completely grueling experience, and was one of 2 people who have ever escaped a Laotian jungle. So that's the piece that appeals to me. But Tracy said to me, I'm watching your movie. And I went, gosh, I wish I had thought of that, because it's a terrible film to watch late at night. It's full of disappointing vignettes right up to the end. So what was it about the film? Well, to feel what he felt like, or to see, Christian Bale strikes me as the kind of person who absolutely could represent that guy. He is nuts. So I wanted to see, what was going to happen if, I don't know, if they would succeed in the story. And you see the Werner Herzog, one of the clips I remember from when this film came out, I was so excited about it when it came out, was they were trying to go through this river in Vietnam or Laos, and it was full of poisonous snakes. And so, of course, Werner Herzog, who I think is just 20 times nuttier than anyone, just way off the charts, he hopped in the water and went, so what? Let's go. And I just think, like, woof, those guys, they got the makings. They're crazy.
Okay, let's
So,
look at Dieter's
Oh,
chart. Okay, so a little bit of warning, it's still a noon chart, so we've got to be careful of the angles
that's right.
and the moon. But you're not going to get away from whichever sign it's going to be in. The moon's going to be conjunct Jupiter.
Right.
Where was he? In a foreign land, fighting a foreign war. That really, it's a touchy subject for Americans.
And he was attacked by a foreign nation, right? I mean, his life was about that experience. I love that Saturn in Aries. He started the documentary with a quote from Revelations, and it's all about how death rejected him, and that he wouldn't have survived except death rejected him. And he kept saying that, like, at the beginning of this documentary, he said, I truly felt like death didn't want me. And I love that, like, how convenient, right, to do daring things.
Because, I think Saturn in Aries is challenged by the idea you might have to work as a team. They are so independent. I don't need the luxuries of anything. I can do it all myself. And I don't need you, or this or that. I can do it myself. And they have to learn that they have to eventually depend on other people to help them, or they find it difficult to accept help. But they have to learn that they need it in some way or another. And of course, I couldn't take my eyes off of the South Node conjunct Algol. Sorry. That's
well,
just the way I am. The
I
horror.
didn't anything before I watched it. I didn't want to know any of this astrology. I just wanted to sort of take it in, and I was very fascinated to just sort of see it from Lillian's perspective. Like, why did you pick this film, right? And Lillian and I work so close together all the time that it's like, why? Like a war movie, what are you thinking? And by the end of it, because at the end of the movie they kind of do, the little, what happened next kind of little vignettes of words, right? And he crashed his plane 4 times after that, like 4 more plane crashes, and he just kept getting back in a plane and flying. And I'm like, so where are we going to find that tenacity? Because that's, and not just tenacity, but like getting up off the ground and doing it again, you know? And it's just like, so you see that Saturn and Aries, and then all of this 29 and 0 degrees is just like, to me, when you see that in a chart, they're kind of a slave to the transits. Every time there's an ingress, something happens, you know? So they're people who have that much ending, beginning energy are always knocked off kilter. They don't always get a choice in that, you know? So that struck me in his chart.
And one thing I always tell people is, if you're attracted, or in my case, if something doesn't sit well with you, if you look at the synastry, it might tell you why. His Pluto sits on my sun.
Oh my goodness.
So I kind of felt a little bit turned inside out.
Yes.
The other thing was, when Pluto was opposite my sun, was when my father died.
Wow.
So I kind of felt this kind of resistance to this film, but
So interesting.
it is interesting to hear your perspective on it, and for me, and it's good for me to, to talk it through, which is why what I think one of the greatest gifts of synastry and astrology
really
in
is.
general is it gives you a chance to think about why I was affected this way, but when I look at the astrology, this is why. It helps me to figure it out.
I wanted to highlight that I think that Uranus conjunct that um, Mercury in Taurus. I kind of think of the Taurus talking to themselves a little bit, yeah. But I think what a humongously inventive person this person is, and with the Venus conjunct the Chiron, we've got that relationship just in that single chart up there in Gemini. You do get the sense that, as sometimes happens, folks who have a lot of personalized Chiron, they kind of roll with that pain and figure out the next way to get through it, right? Or they don't take it personally, like it's normal to. If a problem that you worked hard to solve comes up again, they go, oh yeah, that's part of my deal, let me keep going. But he did fill his basement with honey and rice in huge buckets, because those are the two things that will go bad the slowest. And he never wanted to be away from food again in his life, ever. So I totally get what you're saying, Alex, about that. Like, that Pluto combo is a bit of a. But what does Christian do? What
Oh,
is...
let's have a look. I can hardly wait. Okay. And
oh my gosh. Oh.
Look at that. Chiron, South Node, Saturn, Venus, all of that up there in Gemini in the 10th.
I'm also looking at Mars in Taurus conjunct his Uranus, that the
Right.
real life person's Uranus.
That would be why that tenacity comes through in the movie, right? With that Mars and Taurus, that you're going to pick up on that energy right away. Yeah.
And Christian Bale's Chiron conjunct Dieter Dengler's Saturn and Aries. So
they both have that Chiron to Saturn, Saturn to Chiron. Hey,
yeah,
yeah.
I love that.
For both
I
of
find
them.
that
That's
quite
wild.
healing, right? Because it's kind of a missing dad comes back kind of vibe. Not all, but
the other thing that really struck me in the movie was, and you never know, because a movie will sort of pick up on the part of the story. Whoever's making it is going to be attracted to certain parts of the story. But when he's in the camp, and the amount of little minute details he put together to be able to escape. And I'm like, okay, so who's Virgo? Where's the Virgo in that? Right.
Oh yeah.
And so when you see the Neptune, so on top of that, he was delusional. Like everybody else in camp is like, dude, like, what are you doing? They're going to kill us. Like, we can't, but that Neptune in Virgo, trying the Taurus stuff, but trying that Mars in Taurus from Christian. So that's so funny that's the energy that, like, I really, really struck me as I watched the movie. So it's nice to see that synastry there.
Yeah.
Shall we look at the transits for when the film was released?
Yes, let's do. Let's
Okay.
do.
So,
All
I mean,
right.
okay, so got to be careful of Dieter's ascendant because it's a noon chart,
Okay.
and those angles. But transiting Chiron isn't too far away from Christian Bale's sun.
Right.
And because Christian Bale is a method actor known for his weight fluctuation, so he was in a, is that right? Yeah, he would go into extreme lengths to get into a character.
Mhm.
I wonder, because I haven't seen any interviews, but I wonder how this film affected him.
Oh,
And
curious.
if there was, if it brought forth his own father's issues, um, into this. And we
Oh, I'm
have
so curious.
the sun, transiting sun conjunct Dieter Dengler's Neptune
Mhm.
I'm trying that
And that
Mars.
Pluto
and
on
trine
his
that Mars.
the Pluto on Christian Bale's North Node, really juicing up.
We're looking down here.
Yeah. Isn't
Again,
it
I wonder how it affected him. I wonder, if he, it's kind of one of these things, you really wonder what the actor has said about it. And I haven't found anything, what he said about playing this role.
That Aries lineup was Saturn, Chiron, and the Moon too. Like just because even in the story, he has his partner with him most of the time, but
Yeah.
that partner isn't sane anymore. Like he's left the building. He wants to check out, you know.
Yeah.
And so even though he had somebody with him, he was doing
Right.
all of the work. He was doing it all by himself. And in the end, it was just him. And
Yeah.
so I think you're right, Alex, learning from him what kind of Chiron healing that was for Christian would be really interesting to find out. Because with that moon there triggering it, there's got to be some kind of transformation, personal transformation that would have happened for him there with the Pluto too.
I find it impossible to believe that when you step into the shoes of somebody else, that you are embodying that personality. And I know the actors are really good and they can pretend and they can turn off and on. I know that. But I still think there's an element of, you can't get away from I am this person, even if it's only for a few hours a day,
I love
which
that.
is
I think that,
why I chose my next film. And because it's Halloween, because I wanted to scare myself a little bit, because I actually don't like the horror genre, I wanted to look at extremely wicked, shockingly evil, and vile, the Ted Bundy biopic. Now, Ted Bundy, I am not glorifying this man in any sort of way, but I also am saying that he has more biopics made about him than just about any other person.
yeah.
I think the count I think we're at 11, and the other person has a lot of biopics. Even an opera made about her is Eileen Vernos. She was the subject of Monster, starring Charlize Theron. So people seem to be fascinated by um, serial killers who are the most vile people. You got to wonder why they do what they do. And I've, for my next book, I've chosen to look at true crime and looking at serial killers, asking the question, why do they do what they do? What could we do as a society to protect society at large? Or how can we protect this person? What can we do to help this person? And of course, some of the answers might be there's nothing we can do except for lock the person up and in Ted Bundy's case, execute him. To protect society at large, what can we do? But my question for this podcast really is, Zac Efron is a pretty nice guy, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
He's
High
adorable.
School Musical. Yeah.
Yes. I think about him in Hairspray. He's
Oh, yeah.
likable. He's adorable. But these are also characteristics that people said about Ted Bundy, which is what allowed him to kind of do the things that he did. And so I don't want to spend too long on Ted Bundy, because he doesn't deserve my attention. So, but I do want to point out, um, he has Venus conjunct Mercury in Scorpio, and um, his mother had him when she was quite young, and his grandparents forced her to tell Ted that she was his sister. It was a dark family secret. And Ted knew the secret, but he didn't want to say anything. I know that you're really my mother, not my sister. And, he carried this with him. And whether or not that turned him into a serial killer is a kind of a moot point. He did become this horrible person. In interviews, he spoke about the influence of pornography on him as a young teenager. But so there's a lot of Scorpio stuff going on. And you Scorpios, listen, nobody's saying you guys are going to end up being serial killers. Relax. Okay. All right. Scorpio is a wonderful energy. Healers often have Scorpio energy. My sister is a Scorpio. I love her dearly. She's the most gentle person I know. So please, I'm not saying that all Scorpios end up being serial killers. Quite the opposite, actually. It's just Ted's circumstances led to his really bad decisions. So let's look at what Zac was doing. And we got Ted Bundy's time chart, and we have Zac Efron's time chart. And the first thing I saw was Zac's Saturn in Sagittarius on Ted's moon in Sagittarius.
Yeah.
Ted was a risk taker. He would pretend to be injured to lure people into his clutches. He snuck into places. He was somebody who really took extraordinary risks. Oh, and again, Sagittarians, I love your energy too. I'm not saying you're going to be serial killers. Please. I don't want anybody coming away thinking, oh,
Alex,
God.
let me tell you this. My Mars sits exactly at 17 degrees Sagittarius, and I promise you, I'm not a serial killer.
Well, I always just worry about, people, watching this and thinking, oh, but I'm a Sagittarius, or my son's a Sagittarius, or whatever. We're not saying it all, but we're looking at how the energies tap into each other. And the other thing is, Zac Efron's Mercury is conjunct with Ted Bundy's Jupiter.
Yes.
And now I'm only using my imagination. I can only imagine that there is some sort of, and thank God Zac is an actor. He can step into that the thrill of the opportunity of Ted Bundy and other things going on too. Zac Efron's a midheaven. This is the time charts. We can look at the angles. Is on Ted Bundy's Chiron. So there is kind of an understanding maybe of the pain and suffering of Ted Bundy. And I know we don't want to think about him as suffering when we want to, kind of think about him as being punished, but there must have been some sort of suffering to lead a person to do these despicable things to other people.
Yeah.
And so they have Uranus opposing Uranus too. That's kind of a generational thing, but we're just looking at things about why Zac could portray this terrible man.
They both have Mars quite close to the South Node. Am I looking at that right? Yeah, because we're not at the transit yet. So Zac Efron in Libra, the Mars in Libra and the South Node in Libra, and then Ted Bundy with the Mars in Sagittarius and the South Node in Sagittarius, which to me is sort of just a tremendous amount of energy that could be quite difficult to handle, or that there's a over familiarity with how to be aggressive or Martian. And maybe if there was a war, we wouldn't hear about Ted Bundy. Do you know what I mean? If this guy was born and raised.
I was just going to say something. There is a British author who was born on the same day as Ted Bundy.
Interesting.
And she became a writer, but one of her books was something about obsession and something about being deadly. It's on the cover. I can't remember what it was, but it's a choice about how you're
Yes.
going to use these energies. And, you know, it's not, I don't want to blame it all on bad decisions because it's more than that. It's definitely turning down the wrong corridor to overpower another person. You know, anyway.
Louise Leakey asserted that upon the discovery of somebody who lived quite an old age with a healed broken bone, that civilization rests on our ability to care for each other, that's the mark of civilization. So it is absolutely counter to think of anything else.
I think it was Margaret Mead.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that.
And she specifically talked about the femur.
Yes.
So the femur is the one from your hip to your knee.
Yes.
In that if you broke your femur and you know, you were just left to the elements or to the wild animals. But because this person had broken femur, they'd been cared for and looked after.
Yeah, remarkable.
I was just one of the things that kind of struck me with their synastry was that, you know, for the choices that Ted made, the Mars conjunct the South Node, that uncontrolled energy of the South Node with Mars, right? And the fact that Zac has Saturn sitting there is probably the best thing that could have been there for him, because it would have allowed him to create a barrier between him and the character.
Really
so
good
maybe
point.
not as affected as if it was a different planet that was sitting at that point, you know?
Because Mark Harmon also played Ted Bundy. I mean, there's been several actors that played Ted Bundy that I'm not going to remember all of them, but Mark Harmon, remember Mark Harmon was voted People Magazine's sexiest man several times.
Yeah.
And you know, he played this part. And but yeah, I think you're absolutely correct. There is this barrier, this understanding, hey, I'm only borrowing this role. It's not me. I'm borrowing it. But let's look at
And
the
if you can
transit.
harness the Saturn, you can embody, but you don't have to live in it.
Yes.
You know? Yeah.
So let's look at it at the transits for when the film was released because what everybody said was, I can't believe Zac Efron would play Ted Bundy.
Right.
But I look at that Venus transiting Venus on that Saturn Moon conjunction, and I think there was a real sort of, but I like Zac Efron. He's a nice guy. You know, why is he doing that? And so when the film came out, there's that puzzlement. You know, why is Zac doing this? And then of course we got transiting Chiron on Zac's North Node. Although he's playing a very dark part, it was very different from any other part he had played. And as far as I understand, any other part afterwards that he's played. I don't want to use the word healing, but he might have understood a little bit more about himself and his darker side through playing this role. And he might have learned, you know, not that he needed to be taught, but the goodness in him. I'm talking about Zac Efron's goodness in himself.
You know, I'm staring at that Uranus and Mars up in Aries that are besieging Zac Efron's Jupiter.
Oh, here we go.
And it feels like exactly what you were talking about. It's passing and it has different expressions, but it moves on and it connects to his goodness.
And the moon is opposing the midpoint of that, sitting coming up to his sun. So the fact that people were saying, you know, kind of questioning who Zac is and how could he play this is kind of, you know, the fact that it's this one, the sun is a major player being transited makes perfect sense.
So interesting.
It is so interesting. Oh my God, I could do this forever, Alex.
Well, we can always do it again. But anyway, so that's really going to wrap up this episode. Happy Halloween.
Yeah.
On this happy note, happy Halloween, embrace the horror. And I'm just going to stop the share so we can have a little bit of a reminder to please like and subscribe to our YouTube channels. You we're both trying to build up our channels and trying to get more interactions from people. But I thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Lillian. What a great joy it was to talk to you.